Next up is coach communication. I promise we talk about this. I think that this is certainly something we get a lot of questions from parents about, and also it's quite honestly a place where we see student athletes and parents start to make some mistakes. Two things that we'll talk about in here. The first one here is demonstrating and receiving interest from college coaches. One key mistake that I see a lot of student athletes make is that they assume that coaches know that they're interested in their program. It is incredibly dangerous to assume that just because Bill Decker is the coach at Harvard, he knows you're interested in Harvard because it's Harvard, right? You're like, well, of course he knows I'm interested, it's Harvard, but he doesn't. You need to express interest in these schools, otherwise you risk falling off of their radar. Coaches want to recruit student athletes who are the right fit for their program and also who are interested in their program. They don't want to spend time barking up the wrong tree and dedicate valuable recruiting resources and time and phone calls and emails and their recruiting coordinators, flights to pursue a kid who turns around and says, you know what, I was never actually that interested in Harvard. I'm looking at Stanford, I'm looking at Santa Clara, I'm looking at Cal Berkeley, whatever the case may be. They want to be able to allocate their resources efficiently, and so they want to pursue student athletes who are interested in their programs as well. So you cannot assume that college coaches know you're interested in. You need to make this very, very clear to them that you are interested in them. And so how do you effectively demonstrate that? You need to, quote unquote, recruit the programs that you're interested in as much as they are recruiting you. What does that mean? It means that you initiate and you maintain contact with them. You learn about them just as they are making an effort to learn about you. You are reaching out to them. You are pursuing them just as much as they are hoping to pursue you as a student athlete as well. And a lot of this comes down to maintaining an effective level of communication with these college coaches and not being afraid to be proactive with it and not being afraid to mix it up either. Email is going to carry the bulk of the load in terms of the volume of communication that you're sending out to college coaches because it's free, it's easy, everybody has it, and it's really easy to fire off an email. But don't rely on just that to show legitimate interest. And coaches won't rely on just that to show legitimate interest either. You'll hear from them across different mediums if they are interested in you as a player. Do the same back to them. Mix up that email, give them a phone call. If you're on a texting basis with them, send them a text to check in with Coach Frawley from Yale. Check in with them on social media. Tucker Frawley at Infield Chatter, at INF Chatter is one of the best follows on Twitter, on Instagram. It's amazing. I love giving the plug. Engage with them on social media. Give the program a follow. Like their story on Instagram. Comment on their post. Whatever the case may be. And then one here that I like to highlight too is throw them a handwritten letter. It used to be that physical inboxes and mailboxes were incredibly crowded with letters from recruits. That's not the case anymore. In the day of digital communication, sending a handwritten letter is going to really show coaches that you are interested in taking the time and investing the 49 cents in sending them something with the Postal Service that really shows interest in their program as well.
And by mixing it up, what we found is that coaches realize, these kids are probably stepping out of their comfort zone a little bit. They're not used to doing this. This is stuff that adults do in the business world. They're really going to all of a sudden have to do some things that they're not familiar with, and this is where mom and dad can really help guide them by being on webinars like this, by being able to take good notes and executing on this. But at the same time, we want to make sure that these coaches know, hey, this student athlete really cares, they're smart, they're really able to mix this up. I didn't see this email because I get 800 of them, but I did see this note, or I did see that they send us a message to social media, things like that, and you never know who's on the other end, which I think is really, really important.
Absolutely. And so to kind of think about the way that we think about coach communication, I like to boil it down to something a little stickier, which is what I call the 3 Ps of coach communication. And the first one here is, as you mentioned, and this word has come up a lot, be proactive in your communication. Don't be afraid to initiate contact with the schools that you're interested in and reach out to them first and follow up with them first. And then also be persistent, but don't pester, right? You can't decide necessarily that you're just going to email Coach Leonard at Middlebury every Tuesday, because that might not make sense, and that might come across as pestering his inbox and overloading it.
It will.
But if you are being persistent that means that you have a purpose for every email that you're sending, and you are continuing to follow up with them. If you send them an email, it shows some interest, but if you're persistent in your communication, if you're following up with them, if you're reaching out to them across these different channels, you are showing that you're highly interested in their program. When I think about balancing the persistence with the not wanting to kind of over flood them with information, it's about having a purpose for each and every contact. Don't just reach out because it's Tuesday. Reach out because you have your latest semester's worth of grades and an updated transcript. You have an updated recruiting video that you filmed. You have updated game footage. You have an updated SAT or ACT score. If you have a reason for these contacts, that can really help you be persistent, but not be perceived as pestering in the process. This is also where, coming back to kind of a digital profile, and we'll talk about this in a second too, having a single landing page for things can really help really streamline things. As remarkable as it seems, we hear from coaches each and every camp, each and every year, that student athletes put the wrong name or the wrong school in an email. To me, personalizing isn't just about the fourth P, which is proofreading, but it's also about really doing your research and doing your homework on the programs that you're reaching out to. The rule that I have is a rule of 3, where if you are sending an email to a coach, the most effective way to personalize it is to include 3 to 5 unique facts about that school and why you're interested, especially in the first couple pieces of communication. After you're following up, it's a bit more naturally personalized. But if you're reaching out to Amherst College, great. You can put a note in about how you're really excited about the 5 college consortium and how there's all the resources of these 5 schools nearby. That's not something, it's not hard to find. You have a supercomputer in your pocket to do this research and get to know the facts about these schools, but it's not something that every recruit is going to reach out to Coach Pine with. So use this personalization to A, signify your legitimate interest in the program, but also make yourself stand out as a student athlete in that communication as well. And then again, touching a bit more on the proactive communication, we mentioned reach out not just with the email, but across these different channels, having a reason for every outreach. And then, as I mentioned, using and leveraging digital platforms to create a single place for coaches to go to learn what they need to know about you. One service that's out there that we see a lot of student athletes use very effectively is something like NCSA, right? You have a single digital platform. Instead of attaching the 10th different version of your transcript and uploading the 50th different version of your recruiting video to YouTube, having it all live in one single place so that you can just say, hey, Coach Leonard, I'm really interested in Middlebury. Here's my up-to-date information, and have it all live in one place instead of attaching a 7th, 8th document to an email.
Put yourself in a coach's mind, right? They have a million things to do and not a lot of hours to do it. So when they're going through this, they're sitting at lunch and they're typically eating a sandwich in one hand and on their phone in the other. That's what we hear because we have a lot of folks here that were on the coaching side. So make sure that when you have communication, if you're writing 5 paragraphs worth of stuff, they're not going to read that. So really make sure that you are condensing what you have. Having a profile can be a really good way to do that because you'll be on their radar and they'll be able to continue to follow you that way.